New York pizza. The slice. The fold. The grease. The char. You know this image. Enormous triangular slices sold through a window. Floppy enough to fold lengthwise for eating on the street. A specific ratio of sauce to cheese. A specific chew in the crust. A specific quality of grease pooling on the surface of the mozzarella. It feels like it came from somewhere. A tradition. A neighborhood. An immigrant recipe passed down through generations of Italian-American pizzaiolos who arrived in Lower Manhattan and brought their craft from Naples. Some of that is true. But the specific physical properties that define New York-style pizza, the thinness of the crust, the pliability, the way it folds without cracking, the particular behavior of the mozzarella under high heat, those are not the product of tradition. They are the product of industrial food science, American wheat breeding programs, dairy industry standardization, and the systematic replacement of artisanal ingredients with industrial substitutes that happened so gradually and so completely that the industry itself stopped noticing. There is no single corporation behind New York pizza, but there are specific industries, flour milling, cheese manufacturing, tomato processing, that systematically engineered the ingredients that define it. And those industries made choices about wheat varieties, cheese formulations, and tomato processing that had nothing to do with flavor and everything to do with yield, shelf life, and cost per unit. The slice you fold on a New York street corner is not traditional Italian food. It is an American industrial product wearing Italian-American nostalgia as a costume. Here is how it was built. Pizza in Naples is a specific thing. Round. Personal-sized. Wood-fired at temperatures above 450 degrees Celsius. Made with specific wheat. Traditionally a soft wheat called Tipo 00, finely milled to a specific protein content. Topped with San Marzano tomatoes. Finished with fresh mozzarella di bufala, buffalo milk cheese. The Neapolitan pizza is protected by law. The Associazione Veris Pizza Napolitana, founded in 1984, has codified its specifications in such detail that the exact diameter, the exact thickness of the crust, the exact temperature of the wood-fired oven, and the exact varieties of flour and tomato are legally specified. Italian immigrants who arrived in New York in the late 19th and early 20th centuries brought pizza with them. The first American pizzeria, Lombardi's, on Spring Street in Manhattan, opened in 1905. Its founder, Gennaro Lombardi, had arrived from Naples. But New York was not Naples. And the ingredients available in New York were not the ingredients available in Naples. Tipo 00 flour was not widely produced in the United States. The tomatoes were different. The water was different. New York soft, low mineral water content produces a different gluten development in dough than the harder water of southern Italy. The mozzarella was different. And the ovens were different. The coal-fired deck ovens of early New York pizzerias operated at lower temperatures than Neapolitan wood-fired ovens. Lower temperatures required longer baking times. Longer baking times required a dough formulation that could survive extended heat exposure without burning, which meant higher hydration, higher fat content, and different flour. New York pizza was not an iteration of Neapolitan pizza. It was a separate product, developed in response to a completely different set of ingredient constraints and cooking equipment. The transformation from Neapolitan to New York style happened naturally, through necessity. What happened next happened through industry. The defining physical characteristic of a New York pizza slice is its ability to be folded. You pick up a slice. It droops. You fold it lengthwise. It holds the fold without cracking. You eat it while walking. This behavior is a function of gluten. Specifically, high gluten flour. Gluten is a protein network formed when two proteins present in wheat flour, glutenin and gliadin, are hydrated and mechanically worked. Glutenin provides strength and elasticity. Gliadin provides extensibility, the ability to stretch without snapping. The ratio and quality of these proteins determines a dough's behavior. New York pizza dough requires high gluten flour, typically 12 to 14% protein content by weight, significantly higher than all-purpose flour at 10 to 11%. The high gluten content creates a dough that is strong enough to support toppings without collapsing under its own weight but extensible enough to fold without cracking. This specific flour is not a natural product. It is the result of American wheat breeding programs that began in earnest in the 20th century and accelerated dramatically after World War II, when the Green Revolution produced high-yield wheat varieties engineered for agricultural efficiency rather than flavor or baking performance. The American hard wheat varieties used in high-gluten pizza flour, primarily hard red spring wheat grown in the northern Great Plains, were selected for protein content, yield per acre, and disease resistance. The specific gluten quality was a secondary consideration. But the resulting flour happened to produce the gluten network that New York pizza required. The milling companies, Gold Medal, King Arthur, Pillsbury, standardized these flour products and sold them to pizzerias at scale. The pizzerias that used them got a consistent, predictable dough. The pizzerias that tried to source specialty Italian flour found it expensive, inconsistent, and difficult to work with at commercial volume. The industry didn't engineer New York pizza dough, but the industrial wheat system shaped what New York pizza dough could be. The cheese on an authentic Neapolitan pizza is fresh mozzarella di bufala. It is made from the milk of water buffalo. It is soft, wet, and highly perishable. It contains about 60% moisture. At high heat, it melts into pools of liquid dairy that blister and char at the edges. This is not the cheese on a New York pizza slice. The cheese on a New York pizza is low-moisture part-skim mozzarella. An entirely different product. An American dairy industry creation. Here is the production process. Fresh whole milk is acidified and curdled. The curds are stretched in hot water. This is the pasta filata process that gives mozzarella its characteristic stringy texture. The stretched curd is then pressed into blocks and vacuum packaged at low moisture levels, typically 45 to 52% moisture, compared to 60% for fresh mozzarella. The low moisture content produces a cheese that is harder, drier, and more shelf-stable than fresh mozzarella. It shreds easily. It freezes without significant textural degradation. It melts uniformly under sustained heat rather than pooling and blistering. For a commercial pizzeria producing hundreds of pizzas per day, these properties are essential. Fresh buffalo mozzarella spoils within days. It weeps moisture onto the pizza crust during baking, creating soggy bottoms. It is expensive. It is inconsistent between batches. Low-moisture part-skim mozzarella lasts weeks refrigerated and months frozen. It produces a predictable melt. It creates the characteristic browned, slightly elastic cheese surface of New York pizza. And it is significantly cheaper per pound than fresh mozzarella. The American dairy industry developed this product in the early 20th century, initially for processed food applications. The pizza industry adopted it in the post-war period as New York-style pizza scaled from neighborhood shops to citywide chains. The cheese that defines New York pizza was designed for shelf stability. It produces the specific aesthetic, the brown spots, the elastic pull, the slight grease, that consumers now associate with authentic pizza. But it is a dairy engineering product, not a culinary tradition. Authentic Neapolitan pizza uses San Marzano tomatoes, a specific variety, grown in the volcanic soil of the Campania region, protected by a DOP designation, Denominazione di Origine Protetta, that legally defines their geographic origin and production method. San Marzano tomatoes have a specific chemical profile. Low acidity relative to other tomato varieties. High soluble sugar content. Low seed count. Thick flesh with minimal water content. A flavor profile that is simultaneously sweet, acidic, and deeply savory. Umami forward in a way that is difficult to replicate with other varieties. New York pizzerias do not use San Marzano tomatoes. They use American canned tomatoes. Primarily plum tomatoes, Roma or similar varieties, processed by American food companies and sold in industrial cans. The American canned tomato industry developed primarily in California, which became the dominant tomato growing region in the United States through the mid-20th century. California processing tomatoes were bred for yield, disease resistance, and mechanical harvestability, properties that have nothing to do with flavor. The varieties that dominate commercial canned tomato production were selected because they ripen uniformly, resist cracking during machine harvesting, and maintain structural integrity through high-temperature canning. These tomatoes are more acidic than San Marzano. They have a thinner, more watery profile. Their flavor is sharper and less complex. To compensate for these properties, commercial pizza sauce formulations add sugar to reduce perceived acidity, citric acid as a preservative, dried herbs for flavor depth, and in some cases tomato paste concentrate to increase viscosity. The result is a sauce that is engineered to perform consistently in a commercial kitchen rather than to replicate the flavor of fresh, hand-crushed Italian plum tomatoes. The New York pizza sauce you have tasted your entire life is a product of California agricultural engineering, industrial canning technology, and food formulation chemistry, assembled to approximate the flavor of something no American commercial ingredient actually is. New York-style pizza as a product type was largely a regional phenomenon until the mid-20th century. It existed in New York, in Italian-American communities, in the specific context of a city with coal-fired deck ovens, high-gluten flour, and the industrial mozzarella the dairy industry had produced. Then came the chains. Pizza Hut was founded in Wichita, Kansas in 1958 by brothers Dan and Frank Carney. It was not a New York pizza operation. It produced a thick, pan-style pizza that had almost no relationship to the New York slice. Domino's, founded in Ypsilanti, Michigan in 1960 by Tom Monahan, initially produced a thin-crust pizza closer to the New York model. But Domino's fundamental innovation was not the pizza. It was the 30-minute delivery guarantee. The pizza was engineered around the logistics requirement of surviving transit and arriving in acceptable condition within a time window, not around flavor optimization. What these chains did to pizza, systemically, was standardize the ingredient supply chain at national scale. Domino's and Pizza Hut both required consistent ingredient supply across thousands of locations in multiple regions. They needed flour with the same protein content in Kansas City and in Seattle. They needed mozzarella with the same melt behavior in Phoenix and in Boston. They needed tomato sauce with the same viscosity and flavor profile in every store. This requirement drove the industrial standardization of pizza ingredients at a scale that no individual pizzeria or even regional chain could have driven. It forced flour millers, cheese manufacturers, and tomato processors to produce product specifications specific to pizza applications. Those specifications then became the industry standard, the baseline against which all pizza ingredients were measured. The industrial cheese, the standardized flour, the engineered tomato sauce, these products were adopted not just by the chains but by independent pizzerias that sourced from the same distributors. The chains didn't ruin pizza, but they locked in the industrial ingredient system as the permanent foundation of American pizza culture. No discussion of New York pizza is complete without addressing the water. There is a persistent belief, repeated by pizza makers, food writers, and New York boosters with great frequency, that New York pizza tastes the way it does because of New York City's water. That the specific mineral content of the Catskill watershed produces a dough that cannot be replicated elsewhere. This is partly true and mostly mythology. Water chemistry does affect dough. The mineral content of water, primarily calcium and magnesium ions, affects gluten development, fermentation rate, and crust texture. New York City's water is soft, low in dissolved minerals, which produces a more extensible gluten network. This contributes to the foldability of New York pizza. But the magnitude of the effect is modest. Professional bakers can replicate New York water chemistry anywhere in the world by adding measured amounts of mineral salts to filtered water. This is a common practice in professional bread and pizza baking. The water myth persists for a specific reason. It makes New York pizza inimitable. If the secret ingredient is the water, then New York pizza cannot be authentically reproduced anywhere else. This narrative serves New York pizza's cultural identity, and, not coincidentally, the commercial interests of New York pizzerias that sell authentic New York pizza as a premium product. The real differentiators of New York pizza are not the water. They are the coal-fired deck ovens that produce specific heat distribution and bottom char. The train hand-stretching technique that develops gluten in a specific way. The high-gluten flour specification. The low-moisture mozzarella behavior at high heat. These are replicable. Some are industrial products. None of them require New York water. The myth is marketing. The product is engineering. Pizza came from Naples. That part is true. Lombardi's opened on Spring Street in 1905. Italian-American immigrants developed a regional cuisine in New York that was genuinely their own. The New York slice has a real history and a real cultural identity. But the specific physical properties of the New York slice, the fold, the chew, the mozzarella behavior, the sauce profile, the crust structure, are the product of industrial ingredient systems that were never designed with pizza in mind. American hard wheat breeding programs produced the high-gluten flour. The dairy industry produced low-moisture part-skim mozzarella for commercial shelf-life applications. California agricultural engineering produced the canned plum tomatoes. Fast food chains standardized the supply chain at national scale and locked in industrial specifications as the category baseline. What resulted is a product that is simultaneously authentic. It has a genuine history, a genuine cultural context, a genuine technique, and entirely industrial in its ingredient foundation. The pizzaiolo who has been making New York pizza for 30 years is not using inferior ingredients by choice. He is using the ingredients that the industrial food system made available, affordable, and consistent at the scale his business requires. The craft is real. The technique is real. The tradition is real. The ingredients are the product of decisions made by wheat breeders, dairy engineers, and tomato canners who never tasted a pizza. Every time you fold a slice on a New York street, you are participating in a tradition that is built on top of an industrial infrastructure you never think about and that the people who built it never intended for your lunch. The fold is real. The ingredients are engineered. Both things are true simultaneously. Let us know in the comments what we should cover next. Thanks for watching.